Well, let's go straight to Leeds, where the count is taking place for several seats, including the seat for Ed Balls, who's there, just getting onto the platform in Morley and Outwood.
Morley and Outwood constituency after a recount. I, Tom Reardon, Acting Returning Officer for the Morley and Outwood constituency, declare that the total number of votes given to each candidate was as follows. Balls, Ed, Labour and Cooperative Party, 18,354. Craven, Arnie, Yorkshire First, 479. Jews, David Allen, UK Independence Party, UKIP, 7,951. Hemingway, Martin Francis, Green Party, 1,264. Jenkins, Andrea Marie, the Conservative Party candidate, 18,776. Taylor, Rebecca Elizabeth, Liberal Democrats, 1,426. Therefore, I give public notice that Andrea Marie Jenkins is duly elected as the Conservative Party candidate, Member of Parliament for the Morley and Outwood constituency. The total number of votes cast across the Morley and Outwood constituency at the UK parliamentary election on the 7th of May 2015 was 48,389. The total number of ballot papers rejected was 139. The ballot papers were rejected for the following reasons: does not bear the official mark, not the unique identifying mark, 0. Votes are given for more than one candidate, 27. Writing or mark by which the voter may be identified, 0. Unmarked or void for uncertainty, 112. I'm now going to ask the
Well, I think it's fair to say that's probably the biggest casualty of this election so far. It's difficult to imagine a bigger one at this stage. Ed Balls, the Shadow Chancellor, one of the biggest figures in the Labour Party, been such an influential figure in Labour governments past, and indeed, of course, since they've been out of office for the last 5 years. MP for Normanton since 2005. His wife, Yvette Cooper, Shadow Home Secretary, has been re-elected, but Ed Balls has lost his seat, and Laura Koonsberg with me, and I'm just wondering, Laura, at this point, what Labour makes of that?
Well, this is a huge moment. I mean, if you think just less than 24 hours ago, he had a reasonable expectation of being back in the Treasury, not as a junior minister, not as an advisor, but as the Chancellor. And it's not just the fact that he was the Shadow Chancellor, he's also been, unusually, very differently to the Blair-Brown years, him and Ed Miliband have actually managed to present a pretty united front over the last couple of years. He's been a very, very significant figure in the Labour Party. You also have to think, while this is a terribly painful humiliation for Ed Balls here, this is also something that will hasten Ed Miliband's departure. They have really been in this together. It makes it much harder for Ed Miliband to fight to stay on, given the fact that Ed Balls has lost. But just quickly, look at why it happened. The UKIP vote there was up 16%. And then he lost to the Conservatives by a number of 400 votes or so. It is UKIP votes here in the north that killed off Ed Balls in this seat. A few hours ago at the beginning of the night, we suggested to his team there are rumours he might lose. They just didn't want to go there at that point. After a recount they requested, he's now out the door.
Well, let's wait, because he may say something. He may come up and say a few words, so let's stay on the pictures. You mentioned UKIP there, Laura, and Suzanne Evans of UKIP has just joined us, sitting next to me in the studio. Suzanne, thanks for coming in. A point there, first of all, then, if we can just address this result, I'll come on to others. The point that Nigel Farage was making earlier, which is that it is very dangerous to assume that UKIP is just taking votes from the Conservatives.
Absolutely, we've always said this, but for some reason people have not been listening. We've always known it. Where we are at the moment is I think we've taken 78 second places. 31 of those, I think, have been from the Conservatives, but far more have been from Labour. I think, is it 47?
Wait a second, Suzanne. Let's listen to Ed Balls.
Could I start by thanking the returning officer and all the counting staff? It's been a very, very long night, and so thank you to you for all staying on to finish this job here today. Thank you. And let me start by saying to my political opponents in Westminster, congratulations, and in particular to thank the other candidates, but to congratulate the new MP for Morley and Outwood, Andrea Jenkins. Andrea, you have fought a really decent campaign, and you've done so in a very good way. And I know you'll work really hard to be the Member of Parliament for Morley and Outwood, and you'll have the support of the constituency to do that very important job. So thank you for the way in which you've conducted this campaign. I'd like to thank all of my campaign team who've worked 7 days a week for 5 years, and my agent Neil Dawson, but all of the team. It's the best campaign team, and I'm just hugely grateful. I'm just sorry we couldn't quite do enough to repeat what we did in 2010. And it's been a great honour to be the Member of Parliament for Morley and Outwood, and before that for Normanton. And I have found it, a great privilege, and we've done some important things to represent individuals in times of difficulty or hardship, but also to make advances in this constituency and in Westminster. Any personal disappointment I have at this result is as nothing compared to the sense of sorrow I have at the result that Labour has achieved across the United Kingdom tonight in Scotland, but also in England and in Wales, and the sense of concern I have about the future. We will now face 5 years where questions will arise about the future of our union, about whether or not we can stay as a member of the European Union and fight for jobs and investment, whether we can make sure we secure our national health service at a time of public spending cuts. And those are real concerns to me and to many people across the United Kingdom. Even on this very difficult night, I would just like to say, I've been proud to be a Labour and Cooperative Member of Parliament. And we have always been a party which has been internationalist, because we believe we've solved problems by working with other countries to solve them. We've always been a party which believed in the union because the pooling and sharing of risk which comes from our union underpins justice and fairness. We've always been the party who founded the National Health Service and will do everything we can to secure the future of the National Health Service. Even on this difficult night, I'm sure the Labour Party will emerge in the coming weeks and months more united and more determined. And in the next few years, I think more than ever, we will need in Parliament and across the country a Labour Party absolutely determined to stand up for working people in this constituency and in our country. I am confident Labour will be back. Thank you very much.
Very sombre, very thoughtful, very reflective Ed Balls, who's lost his seat after 10 years representing that area of Leeds. Very gracious speech and thanking all his opponents, but certainly, importantly too, offering a message of encouragement to all Labour members after what's been an incredibly bruising election result for them. Nick Robinson, our political editor, is back with us in the studio. Nick, your thoughts there on what is a major, major defeat for Labour?
It is now the symbol of the whole night, isn't it, you? It is as if an electoral firing squad has felled a generation of Labour leaders. It is as if the punishment that the party took in 2010 after that crisis has somehow been delayed. As if in Scotland they said, we're still angry. Angry not with you necessarily over that economic crisis, but with your failure to stand up against the Tories in the way you want to. Anger in England, which has produced a rise in Tory support, a rise in UKIP support, which is what's felled Mr. Balls, which has made them suffer. You've already heard the parallel with Were You Up for Portillo? People will remember this moment to you. And you know what? I'm going to make a prediction which won't be all that popular. Michael Portillo became a hugely popular figure afterwards. Ed Balls is currently loathed by a lot of people. They will love him. The truth is, there is a side to Ed Balls that the public has never got. The piano playing, marathon running, football playing, passionate, family man, who also happens to be one of the cleverest economists that most people have ever met. Now, the country don't see that. They see the Gordon Brown bullying bruiser. They see the guy who won't admit he got things wrong. They see the tough guy who took people on in the Labour Party. But funnily enough, I think they'll see another side, perhaps, of course, of the husband of the next Labour leader, Yvette Cooper.
An interesting thought, Laura, isn't it?
It certainly is. And I think that is absolutely true in that regard. Even many people in Westminster who loathe Ed Balls respect him as an economist, respect him as a politician, and as somebody who's been there, stayed there, through all sorts of ups and downs, having been at Gordon Brown's side, and then fought to be leader of the Labour Party. Let's not forget, I think, if my memory serves me correctly, he was 4th out of 4, maybe it was 3rd, without looking back at the detail. But a very major figure, but who has, perhaps in the last couple of years, while being in opposition, been able to become a bit more at ease with himself, taking up the piano, all those kinds of things, and it may well be that we see him as a very useful political spouse.